What's up, YouTube? Welcome to another episode of the Undergrad Forum. Now, today's a video that I've been getting a few requests on, so I thought, hey, I might as well make it now. And that's, how do I actually study? What do I physically do when I tell you guys that during my study, 1 hour study and 15-minute break, then 1 hour study, what am I doing during my 1 hour studies? And that's a really good question. I don't know why I didn't make a video earlier, so let's tackle that right now. All right, so when I tell you guys I'm studying, in those 1 hours and 15-minute break and back, what am I physically doing? Well, you'll notice, and a lot of people will tell you this, that when you're making the transition from undergrad to medical school, you have to change your study technique, and that's true. The techniques that I used in undergrad to study are quite different from the ones I had to develop for medical school. That just simply being the nature of the beast. Medical school, more content, shorter time, just different setup than undergrad, so you have to kind of change your study strategies, and that kind of makes sense. I do think there are some people who were able to keep them from undergrad. Excellent, but I don't think that was the case for the majority. So, what did I do for, or what am I doing for medical school? And that kind of depends on the class. And I kind of slightly addressed this point when I was mentioning how to make the first year of medical school completely manageable in that video, titled that, where I mentioned like I study at the desk, and then I got the blackboard and then the whiteboard there to kind of keep myself entertained and constantly moving around if I'm getting tired of one setting or another. I mean, if you can imagine just sitting for several hours just at the desk, you start to get kind of bored, or you start to get tired more so, I should say, and you just kind of write on the chalkboard a bit. That's just fun. Write on the whiteboard a bit. It's just kind of fun. So how do I actually physically study? So it's like three things that I do, and the very first principle I do is it's something I read in some book, or some book on like how to study that I read, and it's the principle that you have to learn kind of like an onion. Kind of, I don't know. I feel like I'm quoting Shrek here, but it's like an onion. I got layers, but an onion. So like when you're learning material for the first time, whether it be in lecture or you're pre-reading prior to lecture, the first time's always a little rough because it's the very first time you're usually seeing the material. Usually doesn't come in very easily or readily to you. So when I study the very first time, I'm just hitting the material for the first time raw, whether it be studying myself or in lecture. I tell myself, get ready. It's not going to be easy. It's like driving uphill on a gravel road, or I don't know, in a boat in I don't know these choppy waters. I don't know these sayings too well, but it's like you got to kind of be ready that it's not going to be completely smooth sailing. Is another analogy. But just kind of get yourself ready. The very first time, what you're doing, you're getting the basic layout of the content. You're getting an understanding of what you're learning. You're gathering as much information as you can. You're kind of building that core of the onion. And as you go back and think about the material again, and you're hitting it again, the books and the notes, you're going to be adding layers to that onion and adding more layers of complexity and detail to what you know. So that's kind of the basic, I guess, like overview or like project outline I have whenever I'm studying. Hit the core, make sure that's strong, add in details and complexity as necessary. And that's kind of a good strategy also for testing, that you're going to be mainly tested on core and also details and complexity. Med school, tons of detail and complexity. They love asking those questions. But if you don't know the core, none of those details and complexity are really going to make sense. You're just memorizing them or probably just cramming. So really get that core strong and add the complexity, because that way, even if you're if you have a question on a testing, don't know it, because you know the core and you figured out what level of complexity, you can usually figure out what you're being asked, because you can understand and kind of go out and extrapolate. So that's kind of the guiding principle I use. But how do I physically do that? Well, it depends what I'm studying for. For physiology, I noticed that what I liked doing was making, it's a video I made, it was called Study Technique Condensed Notes. For physio, I was really a fan of making condensed notes. Why? I don't know. It worked. But for every class, I kind of realized I can't keep my same study technique for every class. So for physio, kind of more of a thinking, just kind of having working understandings of these biological systems. That to me, I needed to write out. I needed some kind of condensed notes. So what I would do, I'll just give you a quick quick summary of what was in the other video. But what I would do, pre-read a bit, go to lecture or whatever the lecture was on, come home, I'd have the PowerPoints, I'd have the book, if I had core notes, and then I'd have a blank sheet of paper. I think I mentioned it, but I tend to use yellow paper for some reason. The ones like lawyers use, but you can buy the cheap kind. Don't buy the kind that lawyers buy; those are expensive. But I don't know why I use that, but I think my sister told me once that like having yellow paper helps you with like memory recall. I have no idea if that's true. I have no idea what the research is behind that, and I wasn't excited enough to go look it up. But heck, I enjoy using yellow paper for some reason. It's not too expensive, so why not? So that's what I do. I got my core notes, I got my PowerPoints, my textbook, and I got my stack of yellow paper. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of, mainly stick with the PowerPoint, stick with the core notes, and hit the textbook as needed to add those layers of detail and complexity. And I would just write these very condensed notes. So I'm kind of distilling down really pages and pages of PowerPoints and core notes and textbook into a little small, 10, 15 pages per lecture. And the beauty of that, one-sided by the way, not double, the beauty of that is that, okay, so now when it comes time to review again, you don't have to go through the PowerPoints, go through the core notes, go through the textbook. All you have to go through is the condensed notes that you made. And the beauty is you made them, so you know what's in it. And really, I think this is something that I really want to stress. The power of the condensed notes is not of just reading them. The power comes in making them. So if someone gives you their condensed notes to read, you're not going to get so much bang for your buck. The power comes in making them. That's where the real thinking and the mulling over of ideas and putting things together as you write down, that's where the real rich learning comes from. Every time thereafter you go through the core notes, that's more of just like reinforcing and helping you put more pieces together. Making them for the first time, that's the power. That's the power in the learning. That's what I realized. I know a lot of my classmates now do this whole condensed notes thing, and they do share notes, but if you can, which you should be able to if you're managing your time wisely, watch that video. Come on, seriously, just watch it. It's pretty good. How to make it manageable. It's not too bad, medical school. Come on. Make your own condensed notes. And this is a warning I'm going to give you. Making those condensed notes takes time. Don't expect it to be like, oh, I'll just do this really quick and go on my day. Oh no, imagine it. You're distilling down a couple different resources into one little packet. That's not going to be quick, right? So tell yourself this is going to take several hours, but that's several hours of hardcore, intense work you're doing and really getting that information in there. So that's like a great that's really high efficiency. It's a great deal of bang for your buck. I keep using that term, sorry, but that's really great. So making condensed notes, I absolutely loved it. I did it for physio. It really paid off. For anatomy and neuroanatomy, I did something I call the flashcard technique. Now this, again, real initial like time investment, just like condensed notes. In the beginning, you really got to put in a lot of investment time, but it pays off in the end. The payoff for the condensed notes, just if I didn't mention it, is that since you made it, the initial large investment is that you learn the material, and now you can just go quickly through the 10 to 15 pages of condensed notes quickly and just keep memorizing material as opposed to having to go through all the raw material again. So real time saver. Now for this thing I call the flashcard technique, the hand signs, what I do is kind of weird, but I like it. I did this for anatomy and neuroscience, or also called neuroanatomy, whatever. But what I did was, so I would take the information, again, PowerPoint, car notes, textbook, whatever. And I would take it and I would create flashcards. On the front of the flashcard, I would create a question that would relate to something. So again, remember, we're starting with the core of the onion and adding detail. So let's just think about the core now. That's your PowerPoint slides and your core notes. So everything in the PowerPoints and the core notes, I would in some way create a question, develop a question that would lead me to explaining something that was in the PowerPoints. And that takes time. And I did this all electronically. I used a website called Quizlet, Quizlet. It's a free site that I found. I think one of my friends told me about it. And you can just like create digital flashcards front and back. I used to use a lot of flashcards in undergrad, like paper ones I used to write by hand, but boy, that takes forever. So type them out really fast on the internet, and the nice thing is if you have a smartphone or like an iPad or even on your laptop anywhere in the world, or anything you have internet on, you can access your flashcards, which is really nice. You don't have to carry around the stack anymore. And the nice thing is like you can search them, you can sort them in fun ways. So there's a lot of power that comes in electronic flashcards in the sense that you can make them fast and access them really anywhere. So if you have your phone or if you have your other device, your tablet, your computer, whatever is around, you can just quickly go through some flashcards. You don't always have to have that physical stack with you. So that I like. And there's also some more power and ability to be like smush decks together and have large flashcard sets for like final exams or whatever. But that's what I would do. Again, this is a large time investment because you're practically going bullet by bullet through every point in the PowerPoint and the core notes and creating a question to help you explain that bullet point. So imagine it's like a PowerPoint slide of anatomy and there's like 10 things regarding cranial nerve number 7, facial, and facial cranial nerve. And you're like, there's like 10 bullet points on one slide, or bullet, whatever, 10 things you need to know. So you have to create 10 questions to get you to answer, in response to whatever's in the back, to point out one of the bullet points. Does that take time? Yes. But the single beauty, which is why I absolutely love this thing I'm calling the flashcard technique, what I absolutely love about it is that when you make these flashcards, though it takes a very large initial time investment, you have now created the world's best review partner. Because now with your flashcards, it's not just like basic terms, like they taught us in high school, which was a complete waste, when you think about it now. But you have a genuine question that asks you to explain a kind of detailed or complex topic that is that's content you have to know. And the cool thing about this is that if you look at that video I made about like study groups, I mentioned how I kind of don't use study groups. I use like review sessions to pimp each other. So this whole thing about flashcards, it's the ultimate review session for things like anatomy, at least, where you can go through all the content, and your study partner here is like your flashcard deck, who will ask you all the questions, and if you can answer all those questions right, you've now covered all of the material correctly in the PowerPoint and core notes, and whatever questions you incorporated from the textbook. So that's really powerful that you have, kind of this virtual person, writing a question, presenting questions in flashcard form that you created, that are always there for you to quiz yourself and go through all of the material, because all of the material is represented on the back of the flashcards. So it's kind of a really intensive technique. On the front end, there is a large time investment. Gotta tell you that. You got to be ready for it. But it really pays off because every time you go through that flashcard deck, you literally are going through all of the material. So, I mean, for like one lecture, you'll have more than 100, sometimes 200 flashcards. But boy, it's exhausting once you've done that. But when the weekend comes and you're going through those flashcards and you're just slamming that material down, I love it. And the reason why I like this a little bit more than the condensed notes thing, or just reading the textbook or reading the notes again, the cool thing here is it's kind of like emulating an exam in the sense that you have to come up with the answer to a question de novo. And in this case, it just happens that the answer is proving content, just like on a test. So like when I'm reading condensed notes or I'm reading a textbook, what I don't like about it is that there's no way for me to easily gauge my understanding because I'm reading as I go. But the cool thing about the flashcards is, there's a question that's seeing if you know something that's in the book or in the core notes, and you have to come up with the answer, and you can just flip the card and look. So you can kind of have this real-time feedback as to how well do I know all of the material. That's just something that's in the flashcard technique that I like, that I don't really see elsewhere. Now, when it comes to, I said three things. The first, condensed notes. Second was flashcard technique, and now the final third, why I have these things here, and why I made that video of the benefit of the fountain pens, because I have like a stack of scratch paper here, and what I do is, it's kind of weird, but hence why I'm making these YouTube videos. A lot of things I say here are probably weird, but you guys seem to be okay with them. But what I like to do is, so if I'm learning material, and say, you kind of do this while you're going through it the first time and kind of building that foundation. You're creating your flashcards, you're creating the condensed notes. There are a lot of times where you just kind of need to sit and think and mull things over. And that's where like scratch paper and for me fountain pens and the blackboard and the whiteboard come, where I just have a place where I can write and think. We do it all the time. Just scratch paper, whatever, you just write things down. That I think is really important because it's not easy for me just to always sit and kind of create these notes or always sit and like write flashcard questions. A lot of times you just need to sit and think and play with material. And I kind of think, I mean, it probably becomes so natural to us that you don't even, I shouldn't even be making a big thing out of this, but that I think is a really important study technique to kind of help you internalize material if you're having a hard time with it. Just sit and just having like a pen or pencil in your hand and paper and forcing yourself to write kind of, I don't know how it's kind of a weird experience, but it kind of always gets you to just keep going and thinking of ideas. And after a little bit of time, you somehow learn the material. How? I don't know, but does it seem to happen more often than not? Yeah. So having kind of like locations where you can always just kind of sit and play and write a bit and scribble while you're trying to learn, while you're creating your flashcards, while you're creating those kind of nice condensed notes, really seems to pay off for me. So by whatever means, have a place where you can scribble, because for me that really helps me just kind of go through those barriers of learning when you're having a hard time with the topic. Scribbling, writing down ideas, somehow I have no idea why. It's like you're just kind of sitting there thinking and suddenly something clicks. It's a great, the aha moment. It's super fun. So have a place to scribble. So that's I mean, that's sounds really basic, but really that's it. Condensed notes, flashcard technique, scribbling throughout the whole way. That's how I study. Super simple. And of course, prior to the condensed notes and prior to flashcard, while scribbling, just the first run through, build the core of the onion, build the flashcards and the condensed notes, and you're kind of building more layers as you go. And each time you review the notes or go through the flashcard deck, you're really kind of stiffening the layers of that onion and getting it down strong. So that's really all I do. I kind of explained this a lot, but I really just wanted to walk you through all the details. But that's what I do. It works. I like it. It's been paying off. Did I do this in undergrad? No. What did I do in undergrad? I don't really know. I wrote notes. They weren't really condensed. They were extremely long. But that's because when you think about it, the amount of material learned in medical school is a lot more in undergrad, so you have no choice but to distill and condense. In undergrad, you could afford to write long notes because you had more time. So in undergrad, I did make flashcards, and that's actually where I developed it. I learned it in undergrad from one professor to write questions on the front with answers in the back that show content as opposed to just simple like terms and definitions, which are kind of mundane. So having those kind of active question-filled flashcards, I developed that idea in undergrad from a professor and carried it over now. And the condensed notes as opposed to long notes. But undergrad, really, I think I did the same things. Except in undergrad, there was, like for chemistry and for physics and whatever calculus or statistics classes I took, I made so if you're taking any of those classes now, which you most likely are if you're watching this video, they're probably prereqs for your med school or part of your science degree. I made a really, really, really big deal about finishing all of the problems in the back of the chapter for each chapter. So I remember in OChem, some people hated OChem. I actually liked it. I thought it was kind of cool. I don't know why. It's kind of an interesting course. How practical is it? I have no idea. I'm not an organic chemist, but I thought it was fun nonetheless. But what I would do in OChem, GChem, physics, calc, stats, whatever, if you're reading, most classes go by in undergrad use a textbook and they go along with the textbook. So if you're reading a chapter and there's like usually practice problems along as you go through, and then the back of the book there's however many, up as little as 30 sometimes up to like 150 practice questions. And the very back of the book there's answers to the odds or the evens. And if you have homework assigned in undergrad, I had homework assigned like in physics for some reason, and the answers for the odds were given, and we were assigned the evens. So in that case, you do the odds and you figure out how if you understand how to do it, and you do the evens for homework. But for GChem and for OChem, we weren't assigned problems. It was just be an adult, go learn, come take a test. And what I liked about that was that in the library we had like the teacher solution manual. So you had answers not only to the evens, but the odds, and you had all the answers, and they had little explanations for each to teach you how to do every problem if you got it wrong. Um, that to me was like my big thing in undergrad when it came to GChem and OChem and even calculus. To go through those, to check out those, what was it called? Teacher solution manuals where everything's explained for every problem in the back of the book. It's, again, a great investment of initial time to go through all the problems in the back of the book. It's exhausting. It takes a lot of work, but it totally pays off. The way I did it, I had a competition with my friend who could go through as many problems in a day. I remember for per exam, we would probably go through all the questions at least twice, which sounds like, what's wrong with you guys? Are you guys crazy? We probably were, yes, but I think we were more so just bored because there's a lot of free time in undergrad. But we would go through the questions a lot. And that's because we were competing to get like really high grades. We were kind of a weird crew, but that's good. When you have people that can really push each other to get to close as you can to perfection, or if you just push yourself, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's really great. So if you're in this kind of class where you can, have a lot of practice problems, do as many as you can, and do them and make sure you're getting them right. Read the explanations, even if you get them right. It totally pays off because the problems in the back of each chapter, most people don't do for some reason. I can see why. It's not super fun. But doing them pays off because you realize when you take the exams, whoa, there's a lot of similarity to all the practice questions I did and the questions coming up on the exam. There's a reason they're there. They're there to guide you. There's only so many questions you can ask per content. So do the questions in the back of the book. Force yourself. If you don't get it, read the explanations. Go to office hours, do whatever you need to do, but for those kind of classes, really focused on the questions in the back of the book, more so than condensed notes or flashcard technique, because there's not much. In those kind of classes where you have those kind of questions, the game really is in the questions, so do that. Alright, so guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video on my true study techniques, both undergrad and now med school. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment, question below, message me however you want. I'll find it on YouTube. And as always, enjoy your studies.